You changed it up to a different song.
Got to change it every time. So, welcome back to In the Future. And today we're discussing kind of, I would almost call it a follow up to our last topic when it came to like AI generating content or trailers. But today we're going to instead talk about how we can leverage the power of AI to go back to a TV show, identify particular product placements that have been paid for already by companies, and be able to swap that either for because of some sort of controversy, some sort of change, or better yet, taking that to the next level, being able to personalize that further to drive more value for advertisers that are leveraging this product placement in a particular movie or show. So, Max, I'll pass it to you. This is a topic that you brought up and you introduced to me. And so I'll let you kick off with what your initial thoughts are.
Yeah, I love product placement, man. It's one of the things I'm most passionate about for years, just because of the marketing behind it, the psychology behind it. So, for those who don't know, let's actually define for our audience what product placement is. So, I have a page
Mm-hmm.
here pulled up from Oxford Dictionary. So, product
Mm-hmm.
placement, a practice in which manufacturers of goods or providers of a service gain exposure for their products by paying for them to be featured in movies and television programs, right? So, everyone has seen this, everyone's been exposed to it. So, top of mind examples in Castaway, right? Remember in Castaway, he just, he worked for FedEx, right? That is,
Yep.
and then like on the island, he just kept getting all those FedEx boxes. That is product placement in a very blatant, obvious form. I could think of a ton of other shows, like like maybe in the corner of your eye, you can spot the in the kitchen where the scene is being shot. You could see a box of cereal, and that cereal happens to be Cheerios, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that Cheerios placement is paid for by General Mills or whoever owns those cereal brands. And what they're really relying on, whether they're doing it in a very obvious markety kind of way, or if it's more what is it called when they do it in the background? Why am I blanking on this? Subliminal or subliminal,
Subliminal.
right?
Oh,
And,
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and but the whole point is that these brands essentially pay for that placement to be there, and the movie show makers or the movie makers. I'm sorry, the show makers and the movie makers, they love that because it helps to lower the cost of their fees, of their budget, right? So it's very awesome. And it works really well because psychologically, they are relying on the audience having this bond with the characters in the show or in the movie, and they're really trying to leverage that, right? So if Tom Hanks works
Mm-hmm.
for FedEx and we love the character of Tom Hanks in Castaway, we're gonna be like, hey, FedEx is top of mind now instead of maybe UPS, and it's kind of that very interesting dynamic that happens. So okay, so we
It's
talked.
powerful.
We
I
talked.
was just gonna say that's almost like a an earlier version of an influencer, by the way. It's
Mhm.
an influencer not on social media, but through actual television shows or media.
Sure. And what's fascinating about it is how far product placement has come over the years and how we have shifted from really just like that subliminal approach to, I'm going to give you a couple of examples where it's just so obvious, like where they're actually calling out the product by name.
Mm-hmm.
Product placement is also fascinating because it's not, it's kind of a gray area of whether it's advertising or not. And we could talk about this later in the future. We could talk about this later in this episode
Mm-hmm.
because now I'm actually seeing pharmaceuticals being advertised and plugged into shows and movies in the very same way. That is very interesting, but we'll come back to
Yeah.
that. Any thoughts so far?
Yeah. I mean, initial thoughts to me is well, number one, yeah, I realize this model is like the influencer model that we have now. It's just like in longer form media, right? It's always been there. I remember even an example of like playing video games when I was younger, and I think there was like when I would find like Coca Cola or Seven Up in a video game, I would think, "Oh my gosh, this is so cool! It's like the real, it's like real life." Obviously, that's much more apparent now in like media, like Fortnite. But yeah, I think with the power of AI to be able to swap it and make that dynamic is really,
Oh wait,
really incredible.
you're killing it. I haven't even gotten to that yet.
Okay. I won't get to that, but I would just say there's a lot of power there. There's a lot of power behind that. A lot of the swapping, and I think it just plays on. You nailed it when you said like people love the characters, and honestly, we've all probably done it at least once. We see one of our favorite characters do something like they get some cool shoes or they got some piece of technology, and you're like, I want to. Oh, that's interesting. I want to get that. You may not even say it to other people, but you're not aware of how influential that is to you. Um,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
And you mentioned shoes. It made me immediately think of an example. Space Jam.
Mhm.
What shoe?
Yeah,
What shoes are
huge.
they wearing?
Jordans.
Or Nikes, one of those.
All right. Okay.
I think they ended up forming the relationship. But that's when everyone wanted that shoe, right? Because it was everyone fell in love with Michael Jordan and all of the
Yeah.
characters there, so they were like, I got to have this shoe, and it's far more convincing, ironically, because it's not like a banner, it's not a billboard, it's not saying buy this. It's you almost. It's almost like they're paying for the result without having to do all of the regular like marketing approach.
Totally. You know what's interesting? It also ties back to storytelling again being powerful because it's like you're watching a story. A movie is a story, and that story has these elements in it. One of them happens to be products or things that you can actually go out in the world and get right by purchasing it. And it's crazy how storytelling is so powerful. And with the combination of products being placed into that story, they become these elements that you really want to also have as part of your
That's a
life.
great point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So all right. So we've spoken about what product placement is, why it's so
Mm-hmm.
effective. Let's talk about a little bit about what's changed over the years. So I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
subliminal advertising and also just like right in your face advertising. One of my favorite examples of and kind of how I associate historically what product placement was and what it transformed into is remember Back to the Future, the movie from
Mm-hmm.
the
Yeah.
80s, right? So
Yeah.
1985 is when that movie came out. And I remember there was this scene that the first time I watched it, I was like, wow, I see what's in the background, even though in the foreground is where the characters are. And what was
Mm-hmm.
happening was it was the two main characters, Michael J. Fox and whoever that old guy is. And and they were standing in front of the the car, and in the background, I'll share an image of this on YouTube or LinkedIn later, so people can see it side by side. But in the background is Macy's, the
Oh
department
yes.
store, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just so like here's my hand, here's kind of the background. That's the difference between the two, and you're so
Mm-hmm.
focused on the two characters and the dialogue they're having, but you cannot help but notice Macy's in the background. And I think that kind of I wouldn't call it like yeah it's like a form of subliminal, but it's definitely not as in your face as this next example that I'm going to give.
Mm-hmm.
The other night I was watching. I actually think the show. I
So,
don't. Yeah,
question.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Wait, not to make you lose your thought, but about the Macy's example, is that a known product placement, brand placement into a movie, or is it just because it? Like, 'cause my initial thought is like maybe it's so natural. I would have just thought it's part of the set. Hey, they're just in a mall, and there's a Macy's behind them. But you think it's
It could have
intentional?
been, yeah, of course. Because well, it's I think it's intentional because they would have gotten into trouble by just showing Macy's and not asking for permission, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But they could have chosen a random building. They could have chosen a made up
Mm-hmm.
company in the background, but no, they had Macy's because that was an opportunity to get Macy's in there and pay for a little bit of the set cost, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's call that one kind of like how historically product placement used to be. I was watching a show on Prime on Amazon Prime the other night. It was called The Boys. Do you remember that one?
I've watched the whole thing. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I tried watching it about 3 years ago. Couldn't really get into it, but now we're rewatching it, and it's really good. And
Mm-hmm.
man, the episode that we got to, they are I can't remember the character's name. He's wearing like all black, no face, wearing a mask. Has like a funky name.
Yeah, but he's one of the five guys. He's one of the
Yeah,
five.
like Enam or something. I don't know, something like that. And
Yeah.
it's an interaction between him and this girl who this like analyst who works in the office
Black
of
Noir, by the way.
yeah. What did I say? Enam.
Enam, yeah, totally off.
I was gonna say it's pretty
Yeah.
close. And she outright says like he like creeps up on her and she turns and she says, "Do you want an almond joy?"
Oh
And
yeah.
that's the difference. That's how far we've come, where it was like a background Macy's that where you yourself, even like talking about this episode, can't tell if it was intentional, to, hey, do you want an almond joy? That's
Hmm.
amazing. That's such a huge difference in psychology and marketing and how we use this tool in advertising.
Right, and including that in man, including that in stories. I would even take it from, so we're talking about movies, but I feel like we're this to me again parallels the influence. And I keep bringing it back to the influencers, but the influencers now are not just doing blatant advertisements anymore. Like I think that was a thing they used to do a few years ago. I'm sure some people do it where they're like, "Hi, this is a paid product, but paid. I was paid for this, but this cup is brought to you by X brand." Now, what they're doing is that they're creating content that has like the product is embedded into the content. So it's like, hey, here are my favorite teas. Typically, I start my day, and well, I'm actually using this cup. That's one of my favorite things to use, and it's like it's more seamlessly integrated, and that just makes me think of the almond joy, where it's integrated into the story. That means somebody wrote it into the script. Hey, do you want an almond joy? Like they incorporated it so that it feels seamless, right? You didn't think she said that, but you didn't think like, oh, that's an almond joy like ad. Just would have been like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, almond joy. That's cool. Like we have that in the real world too.
Yeah, and you're totally right about the influencer thing. Like you said it, you said it a couple of times, but on the third time, it clicked for me. That's very accurate. Where before they were kind of like dancing around it, like, oh, like because people were still getting to know what an influencer was. And so they
Mm-hmm.
were like, well, as an influencer, you're like, well, how do I market this? Am I just, is this something in the background? And then people just notice this shiny object in the background and they start asking, like, hey, where'd you get that lamp from? Or where'd you get that couch from? That's really cool. Or like a bean bag that you're sitting on, and people like, you almost rely on people asking versus the very like obvious in your face approach, like, this is a product from blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Very cool. Okay. So, talking about let's use the almond joy as an example. So
Okay.
obviously when they chose that product placement, they negotiated with other brands. It could have been a Snickers,
Mm-hmm.
it could have been the Three Musketeers, if anyone, if that even still exists.
Yeah.
But they landed on almond joy, right? So there was some business negotiation that happened there. This brings me to
Can
my
finish your point, and I have a thought afterwards about the almond joy specifically.
let me hear your thought because mine is longer.
Okay. Okay. So I was going to say the one thing that came up just to my mind about the almond joy was who are they targeting with the boys? I just realized because, like, as the brand manager for Almond Joy, they need to find shows that align with the target audience. And I don't know. To me, an Almond Joy is like an old school candy bar that I imagine somebody above the age of 60 likes, right? Even I think even when we were young, I liked Almond Joys, but
I like them too.
I think every other kid I knew was like, oh, I don't like this is like an old people snack, you know. So it's interesting that the Almond Joy and the show's producers really came together and said, hey, this is your right audience for Almond Joy. Like, go ahead and we'll do a product placement because I think it's really important to find for the brand managers to find those shows. Even when we start talking about introducing technology to automatically change it, it's got to find the right audience, right? Because some people, young kids, might be like, "What the heck is that? Never heard of that. I don't want that."
Yeah. So that's an excellent point. So it actually flows into what I was going to say perfectly.
Okay.
So let's say, okay, they went through all these negotiations. They're like, okay, the audience of the boys, like Almond Joy said, well, our sales have been slumping for the last 30 years. And we need
Mm-hmm.
to raise it. We think that it might resonate with this audience. Okay, all the negotiations happened. They recorded the Almond Joy plug, and it failed to do anything for sales, right? Just as an example. What do they do
Mm-hmm.
then? Okay, so this is a wasted product placement for the boys. It didn't resonate. Maybe it even turned people off. Maybe something happened with the brand after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
And so in today's world, you are kind of stuck, right? As the movie
Mm-hmm.
or the show maker, you're like, okay, well, I'm stuck with Almond Joy, and Almond Joy, it is what it is. But
Mm-hmm.
I think we're very quickly approaching a giant change in how this marketing placement works. I think that in the future, Almond Joy and all other product placements are going to be able to be dynamically switched and changed even after the recording happens. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So, sticking with the example that we have, so Almond Joy is recorded in The Boys. It fails to make any kind of change in sales for either company, and maybe like the show producers don't even want it to be there anymore. After the fact,
Hmm.
using AI, visualize this. You're able to go in and just edit the audio. Let's just say audio and not the person's lips moving to say almond joy, right? But
Hmm.
in the script, you can just say, I wanted to say Snickers. Hey, do you want a
Hmm.
Snickers? And just like that, it changes after the fact. And then you can just update whatever Netflix, or I'm sorry, in this case, whatever Prime is showing to reflect Snickers instead of almond joy. That's what
Hmm.
I think the future is going to be. I think that the future
Even
of
the
product
mouth.
placement is going to be dynamic.
I
Even the
think the
mouth.
mouth works too. The mouth works. We've got the technology for it. We can do the mouth as well. That's interesting, man. Yeah, because even as a brand, let's say as the brand manager, you're probably, I'm sure it's not a one time cost to on a TV show to advertise it. It's not like, oh, here's a fixed price, advertise, put us in the show, or maybe it is. It must have used to been, but like I'm sure there's some sort of retainer cost in there, or like some sort of repeated cost. Hey, the show streamed 100 times. That's going to cost you, that inventory costs something, because that could have been another advertiser spot as well. Um, to your point about the switcheroo, is like that will make an advertise. I think that would make brands more comfortable advertising or investing into TV shows, which is good for those shows, right? Because those shows get more money, or those studios can get more money. And hopefully, if done well, like let's say if it's scaled up, hopefully it could result in more risky type of TV shows, or more creative TV shows being created. Hopefully, right? That means we have good revenue, of course, if they have the right leaders in place that are going to push for this. Obviously, there's a lot of leaders that are just a bit more greedy and won't do that. But it also it's great for the brands, less risk. Hopefully more revenue, because they can dynamically select what to show to the right people, because it's very hard to measure results on a TV show. Like like what I'm trying to say is like the measurement of advertising on a show like the Almond Joy on The Boys is somewhat risky, because you're paying a bunch of money and you don't really know how much of that's actually driving sales. You just know from your sales may go up, it could go down, but that could be from other channels. You don't know that. You're just kind of basing it on the amount of impressions. So by giving this dynamic capability of doing the switcheroo, brands can have the lever to be like, hey, leave us in here, take us out, or add us to the right audience. Don't show us to these audiences. You have that level of audience segmentation, and both the brand manager, the show producer win, but also consumers, right? Hopefully, consumers feel like they're getting more accurate, personalized experiences when they see that back. They'll be more excited. Like for example, like you get excited in the back. Let's say I see, for example, I see a book that I like, or by an author that I like, and it's been switched out versus having like a cereal box for whatever reason. There's a book there, and I'm like, oh wow, he's reading that, awesome. Actually, I've never seen that book before by my favorite author. Let me look that up. I should probably
Mm-hmm.
get that. So like just that excitement, right? And then you just feel more engrossed into the show. And I think generally, all in all, it's good, but of course, it comes with all the ethical concerns that any type of advertising has.
So okay, so are you talking about personalization, or we haven't gotten to that yet?
Oh yeah, personalization. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So your
Well, the
example. Okay.
switcheroo. Well, so the switcheroo. Yeah, like the switcheroo could when you can add personalization on top of it. For the consumer, though, I think the personalization is important. I added the personalization because the personalization is what's making it less risky for brand managers, because that means that they're segmenting when their product is shown to the right people
I would still split
and
those
lowering
into.
the cost.
I agree. I would still split those into
Yeah.
two different lanes, though. One is the show makers decided to plug almond joy in this case, but in the future, that you could just go, well, I want this to be a Snickers.
Mhm.
But true personalization is For you, Spencer, we're going to show almond joy. For me, Max, we're going to show this
Snickers.
customer a Snickers.
Hmm.
And for a third type of audience member, it's going to be the Three Musketeers, and I don't need a lot of chocolate bars, so I'm running out of brand names here.
Yeah.
But that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That can actually be very targeted and have more
Hmm.
conversions because we know that a person like you or a group of people like you tend to resonate with these types of products. It could be,
Yeah.
like it could, and we're talking about chocolate bars here, but it could be for anything. It could be the
Hmm.
type of car that's said. It could be a Toyota or a Lexus. It could be
Hmm.
it could be a sports celebrity, right? So like when something happened with so a lot of shows used to plug what's the golfer
Tiger
Jerry
Woods.
Tiger Woods, yeah. I don't know why I said Jerry. So Tiger Woods was plugged into a lot of shows and movies, but then something happened with him, right? Like there was like a lot of PR stuff. This would have been the perfect creation to swap out Tiger's name for someone who is less risky, for someone who's going to
Hmm.
draw away consumers and kind of like not deal with any of that bad press. This is going to help brands in an immense way. It's going to help
Hmm.
showmakers in a fantastic way. And for consumers, if you can actually get that level of personalization and swap out products forever, to like something that's showing being shown in 2020 and that show is being rerun in 2025, why would you not be able to swap it out at that point? Just keep things fresh, keep it
Definitely.
relevant. So cool.
No. There is a fourth. By the way, there's a fourth player that comes into this whole mix, though.
Tell me.
That we may not be. We may be. They may not play as an important role, but I do think they played a role. There is the. So we talked about the consumer. We talked about the showmaker and the brand manager. The fourth player in this whole ecosystem of product placement, though, is the talent themselves, the actors. Now, keep in mind, like right, because you're probably thinking, like, so what? Like the actors, they don't have control, but some actors don't want to be aligned with certain products. They need to feel like they either need to get paid more to be featured with a certain product. Think of like a vegan actor who's like really big into like he's part of PETA. He or she is part of, or they is part of PETA, and they're like, oh, we're gonna have like some sort of barbecue meat product that we
Yeah.
want to advertise. They might be like, well, I don't believe in that. I do not. I'm not in this show. I'm not going to be in this show if that's going to be there. So
Yeah.
there's that. But maybe if we can tell the actors, look, not everybody, we're not going to advertise this to everybody. Or maybe during filming, it's not there, right? Maybe it's like some sort of placeholder product.
It was just like a green
And then
screen, like a mini green
a
screen
green
for a
screen.
cereal box. That could be anything.
Right, and then it just gets removed altogether because the product placement becomes dynamic. That it doesn't matter whether the actor is aligned or not. It's after the fact, right? They're celebrating the movie or the show. It's been out. Then you can, just say you can tell the actor, look, every whatever we put in this green screen product placement area, we have a few of these throughout several scenes. Don't worry about it. Like just focus on the movie, focus on the show. We're going to deal with that in post production. You don't have to worry about it. So it can erase some of that potential headbutting that even the talent can get involved with when it
I
comes to
fully agree.
products.
Yeah, and also in terms of like how I would sell this in as an ad placement, I would compare this to the tops of taxis, right? Historically, you buy a placement that runs for 30 days on top of a cab, and it's just like a printout, and it could be for like a Broadway show. But then they came out with digital taxi tops, and now every single advertiser gets to pay a little bit less because you can squeeze 30 different ads in there that will just run different throughout different times of the day, throughout different times of the month. And that's more cost effective per brand, and you
Mm.
get more you just get to test out more things, and you get to kind of you don't get to personalize things with the taxi, but here you can,
Not yet.
because here
Yeah.
it's going to be connected to like Hulu, it's going to be connected to HBO, it's going to be connected to Netflix, and there's a lot more information that those streaming platforms know about the consumer at the end on the other side of the screen.
Username. They've got your username. They know what you've watched. They can buy data from other companies that allowed them to do that sort of match. Totally, totally, for sure. So it's interesting. I do think. Do you think this is happening now or no?
I don't know. I'm not in that
or we
industry,
don't know.
but I feel like I just can't imagine it is, because it does require a certain level of AI and customization after the fact. Like for
Hmm.
audio only, I think we could do that today. But for faces, faces, it's still like your lips still look a little bit weird when it's rendered with AI. So
Yeah,
I think we're a little
split
bit
second though. It's a
exactly.
split
Yeah,
second.
it's like a little bit warped.
Yeah.
But man, when this takes off, I think this is going to spread like wildfire throughout the industries. And we're only talking about shows and movies, but think about YouTube videos. After you record a YouTube video, you could change stuff after it's already recorded. That's remarkable.
Hmm.
That it just opens up so many more doors for makers,
Yeah,
creators.
creators. Yeah, yeah, and doing revenue streams for them, which and hopefully for the brands as well, gives them another channel, an opportunity to reach an audience that they haven't before. And like it's interesting. We talk about advertising. I just wanted to add one last thing. And I know a lot of people feel icky about the whole topic sometimes, but you need to also remember that with advertising, like it's the reason why a lot of your internet's free. Like the reason you have access to so many articles and knowledge is because of advertising. So like I know everybody likes to say, yeah, well, advertising is like icky, da da da. You want to be like, it's something that's not great. It's actually fueling your ability to go ahead and access all this information. Otherwise, you're all paying subscriptions for everything you do. So it's just you choose one or the other. It's like it's all gray. It's not black or white. It's not a great evil. It's like do you want to encourage this level of advertising, personalization, and data sharing so that we can all have free internet access and be able to be able to leverage it the way we do today? Or would you prefer to go the route of how kind of some of these streaming platforms are going, where everything becomes a subscription based service? You want to, I mean, New York Times already does. I think some of these publications already do these, like New York Times or Washington Post. They don't do advertisements, third party advertisements. So you need to pay to see some of those. They have those paywalls because that's the only way they'll make revenue without having advertisements. So just keep that in mind when we talk about advertisement. There is a very positive aspect to it that isn't very popular in the mainstream, to be discussed.
It's also interesting that you mentioned streaming platforms. So streaming platforms are actually starting to realize they can't only do a paywall where
Subscription.
you have to pay
Yeah.
subscription in order to view like Disney Plus and Amazon. Amazon is actually now I, I think they own Freevee, um, which is an interesting platform. But I think this news just came out, so somebody should double check me on this. But they're realizing that you need to have a free model because you want more eyeballs watching the content.
Mm-hmm.
But you also, for people who are just allergic to ads, yeah, they're gonna pay $9.99 a month, which isn't nothing, right? It's $120
Mm-hmm.
per year
A
just
year.
for that one platform, right? And people
Yeah.
have like three, four of them per household. That stuff adds up, and so you kind of have to make a
Mm-hmm.
decision, like, well, do I want a little bit of advertising, or am I willing to pay for it? Or what if in the future it really just becomes this kind of product placement that a lot of these shows are relying on, and in your face advertising, like we're gonna cut your TV show here so that you can watch this ad for 30 seconds. Maybe that goes away. Maybe this becomes so dynamic and so targeted and so um, interesting and personalized that I'm not annoyed by this ad anymore.
It's
Right?
more
People are
seamless
people,
too. It's
yeah, and exactly, and people are willing to watch ads if it's relevant to them. That's always been the case. People are
yeah, yeah,
allergic
yeah.
to ads if it's just like something random that I don't care about and I just can't wait to go skip ad.
Totally, 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 definitely. I mean, yeah, exactly. I think that's hopefully that's the route it takes. I will say it always makes me, just to give you kind of the other side of the coin. It does always make me feel though that I'm like, oh, I'm always being, and I'm saying this as someone who works in marketing to some extent. It's like, oh man, I'm being advertised all the time, aren't I? Like, what's an advertisement and what's not? What's marketing and what's not? The line does get blurred, and I mean that's a natural reaction, but I do understand the positives of it as well.
I think we could wrap it here. I think this is very, very cool topic. Definitely going to happen.
Yep.
And we'll see when.
All right. Got you guys next time. All right.